Yeah, what's good, Josh? Man, the Bigga P, and here to share my thoughts on the Showtime card tripleheader from last night. The first fight was former IBF heavyweight champion Charles Martin. Uh, it's still a trip to actually say that this guy is a former heavyweight champion of the world. I'm not going to rehash his history. I'm pretty sure if you follow Charles Martin, you guys know how he actually became heavyweight champion. So it's a very unique situation. I personally I've never seen it really done like that. Versus Adam Konaki. My thoughts on the fight was it was incredibly sloppy. It was a decent action fight for sure for heavyweights. Heavyweights is really you can tell where the top and then the bottom ends, so to speak. And like I said, Charles Martin is a former heavyweight champion, so you get what you get. But regardless of what I actually do think, the crowd seemed to have enjoyed it. The crowd was really into the fight. It was a little sloppy, both fighters. Kanaki's conditioning was not where it needed to be, and Charles Martin was doing a lot of arm punching and not really standing his ground for a guy his size. But they managed to produce something. Like they were hitting each other, it was rock'em sock'em to a degree until they started getting tired, and then slow down the pace, with the exception of the last round too, where they started landing bombs on each other. I was thinking that maybe Martin, I thought he would actually get knocked out. It looked like that was actually going to happen because he was getting rocked by Kanaki, but he held his ground. I'll give him that respect though. He showed that he wasn't going nowhere. That he looks like he improved a little bit mentally from what I saw from when he lost his belt to Anthony Joshua. I'll give him that respect though. He didn't go anywhere. Like he still tried to win even to the last one. I think he even managed to stagger Kanaki finally in the last round. I was disappointed though at the I wouldn't say Martin went to the body, but he didn't go there too often. Kanaki did not go to the body all that much either. It's like this was a fight where if either one of them had focused more on the body shots, because like I said, Martin was in better condition than they usually is. Kanaki was in worse condition than he was. I'm thinking the fight would have been actually a lot different. A stoppage would have probably occurred, and then especially I think for Kanaki, if he was at least 25, 30 pounds lighter than what he was, he probably would have had enough in his tank to actually really stop Charles Martin. But yeah, like I said, the crowd was into the fight, and that's what counts. I mean, me, the TV viewer, I can only judge it from what I saw, and I wasn't overly impressed by the fight, but it was a decent action fight, and the crowd was like that. And Kanaki won the decision as he was the aggressor all through the fight. So kudos to him. And then Charles Martin, I guess we'll just have to go back to the drawing board. It was the first time I've seen him on any TV in since like early 2017. So go from there. Now the second fight was a fight I thought would actually be a sleeper, as in people were sleeping on it. Turn into something good. Yordanis Ugas versus Cesar Barrionueva. The first thing I noticed too is yes, this was a welterweight fight, but it looked clear to me that both men were in different divisions. Barrionueva, he had his reputation Argentine having the power, but he looked like he was like 140 pounder, whereas Ugas looked like he could be fighting at 154. Like the size discrepancy was so crazy to me. It gave me like memories of when Paul Williams fought Walter Matisse in his HBO debut. And that was the view that I got from actually watching the fight. And for the first half of the fight, I thought it was interesting. They were throwing their bombs. Like in the first half of the fight was actually interesting. I was like, okay, I'm right. This was going to be a sleeper type of fight. And then suddenly Ugas took his foot off the gas, and then Barry Nueva was more interested in stinking it out per se. And then the fight deteriorated to unfortunately a degree that they weren't able to recapture the momentum of the earlier rounds. And it even got weird too because Ugas there was times in the later rounds that Ugas had Barry Nueva in trouble, but he would not follow up on it, and it was kind of frustrating to watch. I was like, I really want. I mean, save for that shoe shine combination that he was like to the corner and all that other stuff. I think that's pretty much the thing. That was like the full extent of him trying to get out. And then in the final round, they started doing, Uga started like dancing back and forth on the left, and instead of really trying to, at least try to put an emphasis on the fight, like this was a fight that you needed to actually, to put a good emphasis on the fight, and he didn't do that. He won clear. There was no question about that. But I was just a little bit disappointed. Whereas Ugas, when he fought Delorme on the Mayweather McGregor card, I mean, that was a slow burn. That was a fight where I thought it was not going to be anything, and it turned into a damn near fight of the year candidate, and probably the best fight on that actual card. So I was a little disappointed at Ugas at that, because I was like, this was a good opportunity for him to really make a name for himself within having an audience right there. Barry Nuevo, I mean, it was his U.S. debut. I mean, nothing more was really known for him, and I thought he would actually, the power would actually come into play, but I just think the size difference was just too much for him, and he got a little worn down at the end. He got, he was a little beat up at the end too. So I don't know per se where he's actually going to be. If he's actually going to be on another show or whatever. I mean, I guess he deserves another chance. I mean, he didn't fully sting out the fight where I don't want to see him again. I mean, I've watched him fight before, and I know that's not how he usually fights. But yeah, it was a fight that could have been so much better than what it was, what I thought it actually would be. But what can you say? Sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. The main event, of course, would be Danny Garcia versus Shawn Porter for the vacant WBC welterweight title. That title that was last held by Keith Thurman, who has been out of the ring since he beat Danny Garcia and unified both the WBC and the WBA belts. And most likely, I think he gave it up because the mandatories were calling, and the WBC likes its double mandatories. So it's going to be like, you have when you come back, you're going to have to face, two fighters. So I think that's part of the reason why, whereas the WBA is not enforcing a damn thing. He probably should have been stripped of that too. But that's a whole nother conversation. So the fight beforehand, I was thinking to myself, okay, Shawn, because it basically is a 50-50 fight, whereas you think whose pros will overwhelm whose cons. Would it be Porter's work rate, strength, or would it be Garcia's boxing skills and left hook and the ability to keep the fight in the middle of the ring? It turned out to be a surprisingly one-sided fight in my eyes. It was, it started off, it was a slow burn, but it was one of those fights that I felt like Danny was never got comfortable. Like, Danny is a slow starter. I mean, so he's been known in a lot of his fights to, it takes him a while to get into the fight. And then usually, if there's your chance to actually try to get some points on the, try to get some early points, you gotta tag him early before he warms up. Danny never got warmed up. I think by the time he was ready to get warmed up, so did Porter. Porter, he was definitely flicking his jab out, doing this, and he was more aggressive, flicking the jab out, landing the right hand, he was landing a lot. I mean, he was landing, and actually going to the body too, which I'd never seen anyone really do outside of Lucas Matisse on Danny Garcia. And so when they started warming up, I was just actually shocked that it just seems like Shawn Porter's athleticism was, and then a combination. He managed to put it together. Like, I haven't seen hasn't put it together like this since the Paulie Malignaggi fight, where it seemed like his football athleticism and his boxing skills, they came together at the right particular time, and Danny just could not handle it because Danny's not a very dynamic fighter. He's straight up and down like 6 o'clock, and I was expecting, okay, keep the fight. At the times that he actually got Porter in the middle of the ring, he was just looking to counter. He wasn't trying to flick out a jab. Like, you gotta, if you want to, you gotta disrupt this man's rhythm. You gotta stick your jab out, especially when when Porter started lunging in. I mean, really, I think Porter. I mean, Garcia made this fight a lot harder than he probably should have. Um, and I have my own theories about why Danny had this type of experience. I mean, I like it might be his competition that he's been facing hasn't been up to par, or the fact that he hasn't been fighting regularly like he should be. I mean, that's probably those are a couple of things. But it just seems like Porter just had his way. I mean, Porter took it. I mean, it wasn't like Porter Garcia didn't land. Garcia landed a left hook, just not hard enough left hook to actually dissuade Porter from going in. And Porter is, I mean, Porter's keep in mind Porter's come from a bigger division. He fought pretty much at 154 for half of his career, and he's fought as high as 168 before actually getting down to welterweight. So, and I was thinking to myself, but then he had been knocked down by Broner by a left hook, and then it could be the fact that he was fighting out 144 or 143, whatever the hell is that crazy ass weight, and that probably could have played the difference. But it was just it was just surprising to me how ineffective Garcia's power was against Porter, and Porter just had his way with him. Like, people were saying that it was a 115-113 affair. So I don't agree. I mean, I actually gave the fight to Porter like 118-111. Yeah, there was one even round. In a couple of rounds that I gave, there was one even round. So it was like 10-1-1, something like that. Um, yeah, I was just not impressed by Danny at all. I mean, Danny looked like he just didn't know how to fight him. Like there were times where like when Porter get inside, it's like it didn't seem like Danny had anything for him. Didn't have like an uppercut or anything like that. He held immediately. Like he didn't really. And he wasn't like trying to fight in the clinch, fight in the clinch, and try to stop him down, or even really try to go to the body. Well, I wouldn't say he didn't try to go to the body. He went to the lower body. He was throwing a couple of them low blows, especially there was one round where he threw three of them in a row, and the referee didn't say a damn thing about it. Like he knew what he was doing. Um, but I guess it was just all for naught. Like I said, Porter won this fight comfortably, more comfortably than I expect. And and the funny thing is too is I was expecting to like hear some absolute nonsense because Steve Harhard's scores to me was just garbage. Like he had this fight like a draw. I'm like, how? Like I mean Garcia did not win. There's probably arguments where you could say, okay, that it was a 8-4. Okay, fine. 115-113. No. 116, 112 would be like I think would be the max threshold I can actually see for this fight. I actually thought it was a little bit more one-sided than a 116, 112 fight, and then that's probably closer to what I actually had to my own score. Um, but kudos to Porter. Like I said, Porter is one of those guys. Like I mean, Porter does Porter does a lot of things wrong, but it makes it work for him. And this was one of those fights. Um, so after 4 years, he's champion again. And immediately after that, of course, Errol Spence came in the ring and it's like we can make this fight. And I'd be more than happy to see this fight. I would love to see a unification of welterweight titles. As many of you know, if you've watched any of my previous videos, I'm a big fan of unification. I do think that there is like if it's possible that the end it needs to happen. And welterweight, which is such a high visibility type of division, you got to have you got to have this type of unifications. Because basically it will be the best fighting the best, and that's how division survives. That's how division survives, and that's how it thrives. You got to have them fighting the best. But 147 has a whole lot of politics in it that does not make it like a cruiserweight division or even 140. These are the fights. These are divisions where we've actually had undisputed champions. But having a fight like this, Spence it would be a step in the right direction. So we'll see how that goes, and I'm happy too because at least with Porter would be more than willing to make this type of fight. No pussyfooting or anything like that. Whereas I think if Danny had won the fight, I would think he would probably go he would fight like a Birdo or something, like a real soft touch. Um, until then, of course, until it's made it, unless he gets a fight that makes it worth his while per se. In the words of like Angel, then him and Angel Garcia. So it was a good fight. It was not a classic. Overall, the car was okay. I say okay because, like I said, the opening fight, I didn't like it. The crowd liked it. The second fight, it deteriorated, and the crowd didn't like it. And the third fight, the main event was cool, but then the crowd was into it. So it was a good offering by Showtime. At this point, I would do Superfly, and I may do it later today or some other time. So now I'm just watching the main event, so that might be worth it. Like I said, because unfortunately, the practice between having two good cards on Anderson night, it still happens, and it's still annoying when it does. Um, and unfortunately, because of the more visibility, and I have both channels, I watched the Showtime card and then the HBO card right now. It's almost over. So yep, and I know next week is Canelo versus Triple G, and I will definitely be sharing my thoughts on that as I will be in a movie theater somewhere enjoying it with a beer and some other snacks. So till next time, peace.